Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you. And as always, I have a wonderful guest with me today, and we've already really bonded with our pre-show talk. As a matter of fact, I wish you could have heard some of it, but maybe not. Her name is Jen Hardy, and she is a podcast host, author, speaker, and community builder who is dedicated to helping women over 50 reclaim their power. And we all love that. She is the host of the fabulous Over 50 podcast, formerly called The Hardy Mom, as well as the Medical Gaslighting podcast, which helps to educate, encourage, and empower people with chronic illness and pain. Jen, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Oh, Cheryl, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. I love your show.
Oh, thank you. And I've just already had so much fun with you. I think, we're soul sisters. So I'm just so happy that we managed to connect and get you here on the show with us.
Me too. Me too. Thank you.
So tell us about your story. I'm just going to toss it, the ball's in your court. So how did you become so interested in fabulous over 50? What made you start your podcast? How did this all come about?
So it started in a roundabout way. So back in 2014, I got really sick. I have 7 children. I homeschool 7 children. Well, I only homeschool 2 of them now because we've been doing it for 24 years. Can you even
Jeez.
imagine? With 8 left to go. So that's a journey. But I got really sick and I was in the hospital and I just kept going back for weeks at a time. And it was a thing. And I was trying to figure out, how do I parent when I'm stuck in bed? How do I
Mm,
parent when I'm in the hospital? I mean, how do I get
mhm,
anything done? Right? Because that was my whole identity. That's who I was the
mhm,
caretaker for my family. And so I kept researching and trying to find things. And I didn't even know about podcasts back then, but I was looking and there were some things talking about it, but they were more complaining, but not giving me solutions. And so my
mm,
husband said, well, if you can't find the solution, it's your job to create it. I think that that's what you're supposed to do. And that's when I started blogging and doing all this stuff. And I started the Hardy Mom podcast and it was great. And there was a lot of great feedback and this great community. And for 8 years, I really worked towards helping these moms. But unfortunately, being the Hardy Mom, that made me a sick mom, right? And that's how
mhm,
became my persona. That's how I introduced myself. I do this because I have multiple chronic illnesses. Da, da, da. And so what I found myself doing is consistently thinking about, how do I feel? What are my symptoms? And when you think about that all the time, it gets worse. I
mhm,
mean, we really draw those things in. And so I had come to the decision around the first of the year that I've got to do something a little bit different. I still want to empower women, though. I want to help women in a group that isn't being helped, that I perceive
mhm,
not being helped enough. And I went to a podcasting convention called Podfest, my family, and I was looking around thinking, what can I do, for
mhm.
creative women? And I noticed that in podcasting, the statistics stop at age 54. There are no statistics for podcasts or for podcasters over the age of 54. And I thought, wait a minute. Not only that, but women who podcast are a very low, it's 30%, and that number gets lower the older they get. And there's no stats to tell us how many women are podcasting over the age of 55. And I thought, okay, that's it. Because I've passed 50. My body is changing. Things are changing. The way I see the world is changing. The world is changing. And I don't see a lot of positive things for older women. In our culture, we are seen as ugly. We're seen as unworthy. We're seen as useless. And I think that is ridiculous. In a lot of other cultures, they're seen as wise and they're sought after. And I thought, okay, we need to make this something great. What's a word that would just encompass this greatness? And so I decided fabulous over 50, and it actually got a standing ovation. And so I thought, okay, that is what it is
Mhm.
when I announced it at the thing. And so we do that. And so I hit the ground running. When I got home, I rebranded my podcast. I kept the first 118 episodes up though, because they deal with
Mhm.
how to deal with chronic illness, how to deal with not feeling well. Well, when you get older, unfortunately, we have a lot of things that affect our body as women. And so those episodes, a lot of them still
Mhm.
pertain. And there's a lot of grandparents raising grandchildren. So I
Mhm.
thought the things that talk about parenting and what things are like now, because it's not the same as it
Mhm.
was parenting in the 80s, 90s, even in the early 2000s. The world is different. And so I left all those up to help these women if they're dealing with those kind of things.
Mhm. I just love the fact that you got a standing ovation when you announced the title or the change in your podcast.
Yeah, it was great. And, I'd really questioned it. About a month in, I had started a group on Facebook, Fabulous Over 50. And some of my friends said, I can't join it because I don't want people to know I'm over 50. I don't want to associate with that. I don't want to be with a bunch of old women. And so I was questioning, is that what I'm supposed to do? And then I got an email from a group called Good Pods that ranks podcasts. And I was number one in 3 categories
Oh my goodness.
for older people. And this is 2 months after I changed. And I thought, that's it. That's my answer.
Mhm.
People are looking for this. And so that's where I'm going to stay. So that's what I've done. And what I love is my fabulous isn't, dripping in diamonds and do it. Although
Mhm.
my thing is glitter, gold glitter, silver
Mhm.
glitter. It's all about the bling, but it's not about having money, living in a mansion.
Mhm.
You don't have to be wealthy because being fabulous is a state of mind. So
Mhm.
what does that mean for you? And for a lot of us, I think it's taking away some of the negative things we've got in our lives that we've
Mhm.
learned to live with that we don't
Mhm.
need to anymore,
Mhm.
and focusing on the good, because it's real easy to get sucked into all that negativity.
Mhm.
And so, especially, I feel like the older you are, the more we know how things used to be, and we are
Mhm.
in a way mourning what used to be,
Mhm.
and that it's okay to do that for a little bit. Then we got to stop, and we have to embrace the things that are happening now that we
Mhm.
love. And so I want to encourage women to do that.
Mhm. Wonderful. And I have to tell you though, I really think that there's kind of like this new wave of, power to the people kind of with people over 50. And I've been running into that an awful lot myself with my own podcast and the people that I work with as well. And it's almost like this new revolution that, you can't, number one, you can't tell us what to do. You can't ignore us because we're not going away. You can't have us go sit in a chair somewhere and tell us, okay, you only have 2 choices if you want to get fit. You have to sit in the rocking chair and maybe do a few light weights or chair aerobics. Or the only other choice is go to the gym and have 20-year-old, Brad and Heather have you lifting weights that are way too heavy. There's so many different options out there. And it's wonderful to see this new kind of energized people over 50, 60, 70, and even older than that.
Absolutely. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think, we need so much more of it. And we need to educate younger people that we're
Mhm,
not, we have a lot to give. And
mhm,
I think it's really important that they see what we have to give.
mhm. I was at a dance competition last fall, and it was really wonderful because there were 2 of the younger women that approached me and my friend who had also done the competition. I'm 66, my friend was 72. And those 2 girls came up to us and said, thank you for being here. You're such an inspiration. And now I'm not afraid of getting older.
Wow.
I
That's
know.
nice.
So yeah, just, through example, I think that we can be incredibly inspiring to the younger generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you started another podcast.
Yes, I did. Um, because of the Hardy Mom podcast and the variety of people I've spoken to, and my own multitude of experiences with medical gaslighting, I thought, in order for me to feel like I have some power over some of the things that have happened to me, I wanted to give a voice to this.
Mhm.
And I had talked to a friend of mine, and she said, "But what are you going to do in the second half of the episode?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, if you're telling these stories, you can't just leave your audience with this negative thing and dump it on them and walk away. Your audience needs something positive." And I thought, well, but this isn't positive. But it was brilliant, because what we do now is we have them, they tell their story, they tell what they've learned out of their story, and they get to tell their advice and how to be a good patient, because I'm not laying blame on the patient. I mean, if bad things are happening, but we all could use tools in how to be better at whatever we do. And so my guests that I have, they come in and they tell these incredible stories. They tell what they learned about the medical system that will help the next patient. And then what's one thing? And the biggest thing is be an advocate and bring someone with you. Those are the 2 biggest takeaways. And so I want to share them here. It's very important. But I'm really glad we're doing it that way, because it does allow them to tell their story and get it out and have power over their story, instead of it being
Mhm.
their dirty little secret. But also it's
Mhm.
helping our audience grow and become better patients, so that they have a less likelihood of that to happen to them as well.
And I'm sure a lot of the listeners may have either experienced something similar to what your guest has, or know somebody who has, that they could say, listen to how they handled it. And you can get some really valuable tips to try and maneuver and navigate through the medical system. And, even I told you I've been in medicine. I have 2 medical degrees and have been in some sort of medical practice for 40 years. And things have changed quite a bit. So it's far more complicated than it used to be. And even sometimes I get overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to work in the hospital. I was an EMT in the emergency room. And, so I have some medical background, because, you see all the things there. And so that's really helped me as a patient, knowing what it's like from the other side. And so, yeah, I
Mhm.
think it's really important that we do educate patients in how to be, and I even did an episode with that with a doctor, and some of the things she said, I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're actually saying those things out loud." But she was very honest about
Uh-huh.
how they see people and what we can do, and it was
Mhm.
very eye-opening to me,
Mhm.
because, it's so fast-paced, and they don't have
Mhm.
an hour to sit with each person.
Mhm.
They've got a few minutes, and when you tell your long story about how you got to where you are, they don't have time then to do the things,
Mhm.
and then you feel
Right.
rushed, and, all the things. I don't know, I always wanted to tell all my stories. They
Mhm.
can't hear them.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, was the woman you interviewed, was her name Dr. Deborah Blaine?
No.
Oh, I just wondered because I interviewed her. She actually is a retiring physician, so she's in the process of retiring, and she's a physician turned author. So now she writes medical novels and mysteries based on real patients, but of course, changing everything around. So that's why they are novels. But she did write one book titled "The Other Side of the Stethoscope." And I thought
Oh,
that
I
was
like
really
that.
interesting because she was able to explain to me and the audience of what it's like now being a physician and trying to function in a medical system that is so dysfunctional and putting so much pressure on the physicians themselves. And the pay really isn't that great anymore like it used to be, and the pressure is enormous. They're working now for big corporations instead of working for their patients. So it's very enlightening to hear her side of the story, and how so many physicians are now they're just throwing up their hands and they're leaving the field because they just can't do it anymore.
Oh, absolutely. My husband goes to the VA. We have a small offshoot of the VA near us, and 6 of their neurologists quit. It was more than half their team in the course of a couple months. So yeah, they're leaving left and right, because yeah, they signed up for one thing, but then if you can't care for your patients, it's hard to,
Mhm,
you know. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes.
mhm. Even when I graduated from physical therapy school, that was in 1996, and that was my second career. And I was so disheartened and discouraged by how, the patients were treated and the lack of time that we had and the amount of patients we had to see in a really short period of time. I went out on my own and I just started my own practice and just didn't take any insurance. And it's like, come if you want to, and this is what I offer.
Yeah. Yeah, when I worked as a EMT, the doctor that I worked with made only $10,000 a year more than I did.
Oh,
Isn't that
geez.
crazy? It's
As an
crazy.
ER doctor.
As an ER doctor. Yes. It was for an HMO. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And so you can see, I mean, what's the incentive to go through all that, which
Right.
is crazy. Yeah, no, the doctor I interviewed, her name is Dr. Linda Bluestein, and she has chronic illness herself.
Mm.
And she said when she went to medical school, she actually heard the doctors talking bad about patients once they shut the door that had chronic illness. And she thought, oh my gosh, the things that I thought and hoped were not true are actually true. And so, it's good because she can enlighten, just like you can,
Mhm.
and tell people
Mhm.
this is what it's like. And this is why doctors are rushed. And I think that's good to know. It's good for us to know, find a
Mhm.
doctor that does genuinely care, and then do our best as a patient to
Mhm.
help them, and
Mhm.
recognizing your doctor as a person. I
Mhm.
think that goes a long way in opening up that relationship.
And one of the things that really does help your physician is if you really take personal responsibility for your own health and to pay attention to your body and to really understand. If you just walk into the doctor's office with maybe a vague symptom, say, oh, well, this hurts. But if you can give them a little bit more history, if you have a little bit more understanding of how your body works and when you found the changes, and the communication is so important rather than just walking in and saying, help me or fix me, because then you're just handing your personal power over to another person who does not know you that well and might not have your best interests as at heart like you would for yourself.
Absolutely.
So knowledge is power.
Yes.
So tell us about,
Yes.
you are an author. Do you have a book, or do you have a couple of books, or?
So I have 4 actually. The first one I wrote is The Sick Mom's Guide to Having Fun Again, because so many moms, we don't have fun. We plan fun for everyone else. We don't plan fun
Mhm,
for ourselves. So the way I set it up is different chapters about, how to have fun when you're alone or with your kids. There's 100 things to do with your kids, 50 of them if you can't get off the couch, because mom guilt is a thing. And when you're a mom
mhm,
with chronic illness, that guilt is rampant. So you can just hand the book to your child and say, okay, what do you want to do? Pick one of these things, and it gives you ideas, because
mhm,
when you don't feel good, the last thing you have is creative ideas. And then I did last year, I published 3 journals. I've got this companion for the Sick Mom's Guide. I've got one called The Path to Happiness, and
mhm,
then one is for business owners, because when you have a small business, a lot of times we forget to set goals and then go
mhm,
back and check on them, and so it
mhm,
helps. If they're all 5-year journals. Well,
mhm,
and if I can backtrack, the reason I did the journals is because when COVID first started, I had a 5-year journal, and it was a standard journal size, just a little thing, right? And you only have room for about a sentence or 2 per day. Well, when things got crazy in 2020, I wanted to write a lot, and I was writing on the margins and in between the days and doing all this stuff. And then when I went back to 2021, it was incredible to see what we had gone through, because you
mhm,
forget. And so as I go back through every year, I can see, oh, this is what was happening. And my son hadn't been well. And I was telling the doctor he had only been sick for a year, but it was 3 years. And we could go back and we could see, oh
mhm,
my goodness, he's been really struggling. But I was frustrated with the size. So I wanted a full size 5-year journal so you can write a paragraph every day.
mhm.
Turns out they're 2.5 pounds, because of standard size 8.5 by 11, 5-year journal is 396 pages. But you won't lose it on your nightstand.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Mhm.
And if someone breaks in, you've got a weapon. So it
Oh,
has
now you're thinking
many
like
uses.
you are a ninja.
A
I just
ninja.
knew it. You are a ninja warrior. That's exactly, everything is a weapon. Except that
So there
tiny
you go.
little notebook that you have to write in the margins. That's not much of a weapon.
Yeah, that's not a weapon. No, but this is,
Mhm.
yeah, 2.49 pounds. So yeah.
It's really interesting that you said when you were going back to see, the difference, that, oh my gosh, my son was really sick for 3 years instead of 1. Especially, I think, with COVID, everything was so crazy that we completely lost track of time.
Oh, absolutely.
And even,
Yeah.
as we were coming out of it or whatever, and things were starting to open up again, it was this sense of not even knowing what day it was, what month it was even. It was just like the world had stood still, and it was
It
standing
did,
still
like,
in our
seasons weren't
brains.
even seasons. Yeah.
Right.
It was just, and I feel like there are going to be such lasting repercussions from the emotional and psychological toll that all that took. I think we're not going to see for a long time. I know my daughter has a friend whose son hadn't seen the inside of a grocery store until he was over 2 years old, because he was born at the beginning, and
Oh,
they
gee.
didn't want to take him out. I mean, there kids that never saw their teacher's face.
Oh, that's
It's
terrible.
just so amazing to me. So I think, those things, it's going to be interesting. So I think, documenting, I've learned over that course of that time, it's so important to be able to know. And I think that's the thing about the 5-year. You don't have to go back and look through another book. You just see, where was I? Where was I
Hmm.
at this time last year?
Hmm.
What was happening? And I tend to forget, special days. What did I do for my child on their birthday? Well, now I know. And I
Hmm.
won't do that same thing 2 years in a row, where, I at least have a 5-year break of doing different things. So yeah, it's really helpful.
Well, I love having that documentation. And the ability to look back and say, okay, I wasn't making this up. Or, wow,
Right.
look at all the progress I've made since then. Because I will have my clients, because I've done this for myself, is write down, okay, this is what I did today. This is what I ate. This is, what I worked out or I did not, or just what I did, just so I could look back and know, okay, I'm not making this up. I haven't been eating terribly, or I have been making some progress. It's just really important to know, to look back and have some sort of documentation or some sort of record, especially if you do need to look at something regarding your health, you might have that there too.
Exactly. And that's why I did the one for the moms with chronic illness, because things are so overwhelming, and
Hmm.
so it's just broken up, and every month has goals in
Mm.
all of my journals, but they're
Hmm.
open-ended. So
Hmm.
I'm not telling you what your goal has to be. I'm giving
Hmm.
you a ballpark idea about, and then you fill in how you want to do that. And then you
Hmm.
go back next year. Did I fulfill that goal? Did I not? Was that a good idea? Should I tweak it, kind of a thing? So you're always growing,
Hmm.
because, we have to always be growing and learning. We have to be, because when you stagnate, things just, you don't, yeah, we just need to grow.
Hmm.
It's so important.
And that's why I love the open-endedness of the goals, because you can tweak it however you want to, and there's no judgment in that. Because I really
Exactly.
don't like when somebody says, okay, you will, and that's how we used to write our physical therapy goals. That's another thing that drove me crazy. In 2 weeks, the patient will be able to blah, 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 blah. And, that's not real life. It's not reality. And you have to give yourself some grace as you are trying to, achieve a goal, that it's more about the journey rather than the destination.
Right.
And then
Because life
take away the
happens.
life happens, and judgment is not good.
No, from ourselves either.
Well, that's what I meant. Self-judgment
Yes.
is probably the
Oh my God.
worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one can beat me up better than I can myself.
Yeah. It's interesting. We have neighbors. We had neighbors that weren't very kind. And my
Mhm.
daughter said, I thought we are supposed to love our neighbors like ourselves. And I said, but they do. And that's how they love
Oh.
themselves. Right. And so they are loving us like that. And isn't that sad? And she said, oh, that's very sad that's how they think about them. And I said, it is. So the next time they say something rude, just think, isn't it, instead of taking it personally, isn't it sad that you're so sad inside that that's how you're treating me? And it really changed their perspectives
Mhm.
on people who aren't very nice. And it doesn't mean we should put up with not being treated nicely,
Mhm.
but just that we can have some compassion, because obviously they're miserable.
Yeah, compassion and understanding. There's an awful lot of self-loathing out there and self-hatred,
Yeah,
and it's easy to project that on other people.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
struggled with
so
that for a long time. I'm glad it's changed.
well, yeah, well, you're looking at the master of it, but finally, that was the best thing about turning 50. It was almost like, and I knew, because my 30s weren't that great. My 30s were pretty bad, and my 40s were worse. And I always kept thinking when I was in my 40s, especially my mid to late 40s, if I could just make it to 50. And I don't know why I thought that, but I felt like I was crawling to the finish line of the big 50. And it was pretty amazing that once I did turn 50, life just changed completely. The whole world opened up. I learned how to say no at the age of 50. I thought that was pretty
Well,
powerful.
it's so interesting because I never thought I'd make it to 50. And I think it's interesting that you say that, because once I did, I thought, well, now every day is like, this is gravy. Well, also my doctors did tell me in 2018 I wasn't going to make it to 2019.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so, oh yeah, well, they didn't think I'd make it in 2014, and then I did. I made it, and then 2018, they're like, oh, there's no way. And so, I mean, every day I shouldn't even be walking. I have no
Hmm.
muscle in the outer part of my lower back at all. It's all white. When you look at the scan, I actually put it up on my website because I thought people aren't going to believe when I tell the story. So it's up there on the Hardy Mom site. You could see a normal scan and my scan. And the doctor looked at my husband. He said, she shouldn't be sitting. She should be strapped in a chair. And here I am. So
Jeez.
every day is like, every day that I can breathe is
Hmm.
a win, right? But every day
Hmm.
that I can stand on my own 2 feet, it's yeah, absolutely a win.
So I
So
just want to highlight this for the audience, because I'm real big on not letting other people put labels on you, and that the experts aren't always right. And so if you get a prognosis of, like, well, you're not going to be here next year, just don't take it on.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, if you say, and it's kind of like my Hearty Mom podcast, right? I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick. I'm dying, I'm
Mhm.
dying, I'm dying. Well, guess what? Then you're sick and dying. I mean, we're all dying. I
We're
mean,
all dying. Yeah.
no one's making it. Let's just be real. So instead of, but yeah, the timeline that a physician might give you is their best guess, but
Mhm.
it's a guess. And
Mhm.
so all you do is you say, okay, if that were to be true, what would I want to do to my life with my life? And you start
Mhm.
doing it. But you
Mhm.
do it with a 5 year and a 10-year goal in mind. You
Mhm.
don't do it with a 6 months, I'm done with this goal, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
see what happens because it can work. You
Mhm.
don't know. You hear about all the time people that defied the odds. My uncle had lung cancer. My husband and I were just talking about this. He had a lung replacement and he moved to Arkansas. So his last year would be good, which I moved to the beach. So my last year would be good. He lived for 20 years with one lung. So, you don't know. You
Mhm.
don't. And I think it's really, really good
And
to
I think it's
to
kind of fun to prove the experts wrong sometimes too.
absolutely
Yeah.
in a good way. Yes.
Right. When I was in my mid-30s, I was a chronic pain patient and it had been 2.5 years. I mean, it was a horrible story. But I was told that I would never be able to do my laundry and my grocery shopping again, all in the same day because the arthritis in my spine was so severe, it ended up being bedridden. And it was like, wait a minute, you don't understand. I'm going back to ballet class. And one of my doctors actually laughed at me and she goes, no, you don't understand. You're a chronic pain patient. You will always be a chronic pain patient. And then she told me, oh, yes. And then she told me to start applying for disability because I was going to need it. And you know what? It was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy because she was right. About 20 years later, was it 20 years? Even less than, yeah, it's about 20 years later. I couldn't do my laundry and my grocery shopping all on the same day because every morning I would go and take a professional level ballet class. And then 3 times a week afterwards, I would go across town, go to the dojo and do a martial arts class. So I was way too busy. So,
I love
prove
it.
'em wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I really believe, I mean, if you could, if positive thinking could always make you healthy, no one would have cancer. So like, I
Mhm,
don't think I don't think it's fair to say that all you have to do is think positive. All you have to do is, because I think that takes away from so many people that really struggle.
mhm,
But your mindset has so much to do with how
mhm,
you are. And if you don't even try,
mhm,
you don't have a chance of being better.
mhm,
If you just give up, that is going to be it, you
mhm.
know? So I think it's so important to just say, like you said, just think positive, plan for the future.
Have you ever read the book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles?
No.
Oh my gosh, wonderful book. Bernie, I think it's
Okay.
Bernie Siegel. I think Dr. Bernie Siegel. They're old books. And he passed away quite a while ago, but it's Love, Medicine, and Miracles. And his second book was Peace, Love, and Healing. And I still have both copies because I loved them so much. And he talks about that. He talks about not listening to the doctors. He talks about, don't be a good patient, be a bad patient. You want to make waves, you want to make noise, don't be the cooperative one. And he talks a lot about mindset and he tells wonderful stories about so many of his patients that, made miraculous recoveries when they weren't supposed to.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I will definitely get those because
Mhm.
this is a perfect time for me to read those books. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, guess that was serendipitous, wasn't it? You have something else too that you have going on. You got a lot going on, and we're talking about all the good stuff. You've got another wonderful project that you're working on. I don't know if you've launched it yet.
So it's just starting, and it's called Jen's Friends. And I'm so passionate about this because when my mom was alive, she would get these inspiring emails every day, and she would always forward them to me. I don't know if you've got an older person in your life who likes to forward the emails to you all the
Yeah,
time, but
my mom used
finally,
my mom and dad used to do that.
I finally had to say, oh, please stop. Like they inspire you, but they're driving me crazy. But that was in the back of my mind. And then I've got 7 kids, and 5 of them are out all over the country and all over the world and doing their thing. And I thought, I miss them. And if
Mm,
I didn't have my younger kids and my husband at home, I would be sad. I would be
mm,
so sad. And my husband is such an encourager. And every day he tells me I'm beautiful and he tells me I'm doing great things. And he's just so amazing. And I thought, well, There's a lot of women that don't have that, especially
Mhm.
older women. And
Mhm.
I want to be that. I want to pay forward what he's giving me. So I have a daily email. It's just 2 or 3 minutes a day because I don't want to take a lot of time. And I just tell them, you are beautiful. You're going to do great things today. And you are loved and you have talent. And, there's different things on different days. And then we have little projects where,
Mhm.
and I want them to stay moving. So there's two different ways you can move. You can get out and play tennis, or if you can't, just lift your arms, lift your legs, wiggle your finger. Like there's, whatever your
Mhm.
level is. And so we just encourage them to move forward in their life, because
Mhm.
even if you're on hospice, you can do things.
Mhm.
If only say an encouraging word to someone, that could be the difference between life or death for the person that hears that. That may be what
Mhm.
they need to hear that day. So it doesn't matter where you are or what your level of health is. We
Mhm.
all can make a difference in the world every single day. So
Mhm.
I want to make that difference in the life of other women so that they can make that difference in the life of
Mhm.
others.
And there is the upside, the positive aspect of the internet, because sometimes technology, I'm like, oh, but yeah, the fact that we
Yeah,
could encourage people, you can reach women all over, not only the United States, but all over the world.
absolutely. And it's giftable. So if you've got a parent or a grandparent where you think, oh, I feel so bad because I don't call them like I should. Well,
Hmm.
that's great. Then you can send this. And then every time they open it up, they know that it came from you.
Hmm.
So, it's just, there's a
So
lot
you
of
have
different ways
launched
to
this
launch it.
already.
I have launched. Yeah.
Okay, so
So
how
we're
could
just in
listeners
the
sign up for
baby
that?
stages. So if they go to jenhardy.net slash
Mhm.
friends,
Okay,
that's it. That's all they have to do. And then they'll get their first email. It'll be
excellent.
my silly face being silly because, we all need humor.
Yeah, we all do.
But I try to make it
Amen.
super easy,
Hmm.
super easy, because I know that if I've got 80-year-olds that are doing it, some of them will be very tech savvy, but some of them will not. And so I need
Hmm.
to make it really simple. So there's a play button right in the email and you push it. And the video can't be in the email because there's no email service that like houses the whatever.
Right.
But it's a very simple, they just click a button. So make it easy.
Hmm.
And it
Awesome.
has taken months to get it all flowing, but I've got it. I'm so proud of it. So
Well, and thank you for doing that. And I'm proud of you for figuring out the technology.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So where can people find your books?
So Amazon, if they
Mhm.
all they have to do is put in Jen Hardy,
Mhm.
JenHardy on Amazon, and then all my books come up. You just click
Okay.
on me. It's the easiest way. And then my website is jenhardy.net.
Mhm. So
And
if
that's it.
people want to contact you or connect with you, they can do that through your website.
They can do it through my website, and I'm at the Jen Hardy everywhere.
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram, whatever, if that's what you want. But yeah, the website is the best place because
Okay.
everything's there.
Okay. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we wrap up, do you have like one final pearl of wisdom? I mean, you've given us so much wonderful information, great tips and advice, and how we can navigate through this crazy life. Do you have any final, like one pearl of wisdom you want to leave with the audience today?
I do. I know the way things are out there seems a little overwhelming sometimes. And
Mhm.
the rates of depression and anxiety are higher than they've ever been. And a
Mhm.
lot of people are really down. And so what I've noticed for me, that when I am really struggling, if I go out and do something for somebody else, specifically what I wish was done for me,
Mm.
it makes me feel really good. And so I just encourage you're listening and to go and do something kind for somebody today,
Mm.
because not only is it going to touch them, but it is going to make you feel a lot better. And if we all just do one kind thing every day, the whole world is going to be a better place.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. And I just loved our conversation, both online and off.
I did too. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. Make sure that you do share this episode with everyone you know. There is a lot of really incredibly valuable information and advice in it that I think could reach an awful lot of people and help them navigate their way through life. Do go to Jen's website, check out her podcasts, and check out her Jen's Friends group. I love that. And her books. And she's a wonderful person, obviously. Reach out and just say hi to her. Just send her an email and say, hey, Jen, loved your episode. And
I would love
remember,
that.
I know you would. And do remember to be kind. Do something kind, not only for someone else every single day, do something kind for yourself. And I do believe when we do that, the world will be a better place. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.